lot of companies are resistant to experimentation because it involves humans letting go of control.
I definitely do that where I pick up the phone and then 5 minutes later I'll be like, what was I even doing here?
We shouldn't be afraid of gathering data and learning. What we should be afraid of is thinking we're right.
Hello world and welcome to the Tech Overflow podcast. I'm Hannah Clayton-Langton.
And I'm Hugh Williams, and we are the podcast that explains technology to curious people.
We are indeed, and today we are coming to you from Hugh's place in Flinders. So I'm still down under and still loving life. Today I tried my first Magic, which is a type of coffee. I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. It was just like a really, really good flat white. Is that fair?
I think that's fair. The way it's done is you grind the coffee, put it in the machine, and just run it into one cup when you normally split it between two, and you kind of stop it halfway, and then so you get the best bit.
Oh, yeah.
And then, put in the milk, bit of coffee art, life's good.
It was great. So what are we talking about today?
We are talking about, Hannah, why you can't put your phone down.
It is true, guys. I can't put my phone down, which my husband and my mother, I'm sure, can attest to. But I'm hoping we're going to learn that it's not just me.
It's not just you. I pick up my phone way too often. In fact, I think I've got to a stage in my life where I sometimes pick it up to do something, and I find myself just drawn to an app. I open up the app, I go deep into this app, and then a couple of minutes later, I can't remember exactly why I picked my phone up in the first place. But phones are super, super addictive, and we're going to really dig into that topic.
Yeah, I'm not going to reveal my screen time numbers because I'm not proud of them, but I definitely do that where I pick up the phone and then 5 minutes later I'll be like, what was I even doing here? And sometimes I'll close an app and I will literally naturally navigate to it, like Instagram or maybe Slack if it's work related, and I've just closed it and my brain is like looking for more stimulation or something.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the companies that build these apps are trying to get you to engage with their app, stay engaged with their app. And today we're going to chat a little bit about the methods they use to do that, some things around sort of experimentation and how they try and improve their apps and their web experiences as well. And really explain that it isn't all about you, Hannah. It's not some character failing. It's you versus big tech, and big tech is winning.
Wow. Okay. And are we going to learn something like it's just like tip-top product management that's drawing me back?
Yeah. There are lots and lots of bright people working in these large companies, and their mission is to drive engagement and figure out ways to keep you engaged, Hannah.
I am very engaged. Okay. So Hugh, as a product management professional, if you're after my quote unquote engagement, like what behavior are you searching for from me as a smartphone user?
So I want you to use the app or the web experience in a deep way, and that's going to depend a little bit on whether it's something like a Facebook or an Instagram that's more of a social experience, or something like Google Maps, guiding you from A to B, or Google Search. So what engagement means is going to vary between the apps, but inside of these companies, they are definitely measuring engagement in some way, and they're doing some aggregate counting. So for example, a lot of these big companies track what's called DAU, which stands for daily active users. And so they're very, very interested in the number of people that use the product every day. And they've probably got a goal around driving up DAU over the year. And so all the product managers, all these super smart people who are working in these teams, they've probably got DAU goals. Mm-hmm. And they're probably really trying to make sure that whatever it is that they build drives a daily habit.
Okay, so just thinking back to when we've talked about metadata. So for like a social network type app like LinkedIn or Instagram, engagement is basically me scrolling, maybe hitting a like. Whereas for an app like Uber, or any ride sharing app, which is much more transactional, the engagement's going to be about me like converting, requesting a ride.
Something.
Yeah.
Buying something.
Makes sense. Okay, so engagement is one metric, or maybe it's a suite of metrics that might look slightly different for different products. But can you give us some other metrics that these companies are going to be tracking? Yeah,
absolutely. Great question, Hannah. So MAU is another one. You can guess what that is.
Monthly active users.
That's it.
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, ding, ding. And so, it's going to be a much bigger number than DAU, right? So DAU is the number of users that are using you on a particular day. MAU is the number of users who've used you in a particular month. So you're typically going to get a much, much larger number. What often companies are interested in is the ratio between those two things, right? So if you think about what percentage of the daily users are using you monthly, that's pretty interesting, right? So what they call the DAU-MAU ratio. So take the number of daily users, divide it by the number of monthly users, and you get kind of the percentage, if you like, of folks who are using you as a daily habit, who are in your engaged user base that are using you monthly.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you'll often find in these companies, and particularly the social companies, is that they're trying to drive up the DAU-MAU ratio. So they're trying to take that latent user base who are using the app on a monthly basis and trying to activate them to be more daily. So the DAU-MAU ratio is one of the other things that they track.
And presumably the MAU user base is attractive because they know you've used them before. You might have lapsed as a sort of more loyal user, and that's a sort of lower hanging fruit than having to bring someone brand new in, get them to register, get them to create the habit. Yeah.
Exactly, Hannah. And, when I was working on Google Maps, we had about 1 billion MAU. So about 1 billion users used us monthly, but not that many users used it daily. So what was happening there was when a user really didn't know how to navigate from A to B, so you're going to somewhere unfamiliar, you'd pull out Google Maps, you'd love it, it'd help you get to a place, but it wasn't a daily habit. So it wasn't something that you were always using to guide you through the world. It was something you were using when you didn't know how to get through the world. And so we were pretty interested in the DAU-MAU ratio. How do you drive that up? How do you turn Google Maps more into a daily product?
That makes sense, because I don't need Google Maps for my commute. Maybe if I'm looking at if the trains are on time. If I'm doing a more exploratory travel on the weekend, then that's the first thing I fire up.
Yeah. And look, they did a lot of work on Google Local, probably after I left, to be honest, where they really did a lot on opening hours, reviews, photos, the latest photos, getting people to take more photos. So trying to give you a real feeling of the vibe of places. And so that helped it become much more of a daily habit. It wasn't just a driving app.
Okay, so for all apps, you have your user base and your frequency of use. And then I assume for Amazon, it's going to be about searches, adds to basket, that sort of thing.
Yep.
For Instagram, it's when I like or maybe send a post to someone, or I hit up a story or something, I add something to my story. And then Uber, it's going to be about actually ordering the Uber. WhatsApp, do WhatsApp even have to track? Like, isn't everyone just using it all the time?
Yeah, well, I guess they've got some fantastic competitors. Obviously Apple has the iMessage ecosystem, it's Facebook Messenger.
True.
There's lots of other things that people use. So certainly if I was at WhatsApp, I'd be tracking that MAU, I'd be tracking DAU, I'd be tracking the ratio between those and making sure that I was continuing to drive that up.
That's true. There's this really weird phenomenon where I can be speaking to the same person on Instagram, WhatsApp, and then maybe Facebook Messenger, probably less so because I've aged out of that a bit, but it's like a WhatsApp conversation is different to an Instagram Messenger conversation, even though it's both via my phone. That's like my boss.
And both on Meta.
Yeah. Or my boss will Slack me, and then if I don't answer, he'll WhatsApp me and then call me. And I'm like, James, it's the same device. If I'm not replying, it's normally because I just haven't seen it and I'm not going to see your call. But he's always trying his luck.
Yeah. But certainly, these are the kinds of things that all these teams are tracking. And of course, as a competitor releases a feature. So, if we're working on one of these companies and we release a feature that's really compelling for our users, the user base will shift slightly.
Yeah, for sure.
And, our job is to respond to that and make sure that we continue to drive up our metrics. I'll throw one more metric in the mix too, Hannah. There's a thing called 3D7, 4D7. Have you heard of that one?
Okay, no, but I'm guessing it's 3 days out of 7 and 4 days out of 7.
Absolutely. And so you're interested in users who are fairly engaged.
Oh my God, I'm 77 Instagram. I'm 8D7 Instagram.
Well, they will love you because I bet they're tracking 3D7 and 4D7 to see if people are, pretty engaged, using it most of the time throughout the week. So that's another popular metric.
I once dated a guy who worked for a dating app, which is a bit meta. And he was an analyst there, and he was telling me about the metrics that they were tracking. And I know that Hinge says stuff like, our main objective is that you delete the app, but that's obviously just marketing. And he was talking about it was messages exchange. And then he was like, oh, we can tell when you've shared a phone number or something like that. And it was pretty interesting stuff, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, dating's a hard one. I worked at Tinder for a little while, and you're right. People are super, super engaged, and that's fantastic. And you want them to be engaged and using the product and, carrying out the tasks, meeting people, that kind of stuff. But then when they get into a happy relationship, they vanish.
You hope.
Yeah.
you hope they do.
Yeah, happy relationship, you hope they vanish. I guess we should be a bit more open-minded about it, but people vanish. And then, of course, if that relationship doesn't work, they appear again and become super, super engaged. So often, users are active for a while, inactive for a while, and then they come back.
I was going to say that must be difficult to predict, but then I bet you have people who disappear off for 3 weeks and then they're back again.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of that going on. And we used to have a sociologist at Tinder, and her job was to really think about people and dating and definitely had smart people in the team who really thought about dating from a perspective that wasn't just tech.
This ultimately sounds like this is example of great product management, right? Like if the goal of Instagram or WhatsApp is to have me using their app 3 or 4D7, then they are absolutely smashing that goal.
Yeah, they must love you, Hannah. You're even an advocate for their ads.
Yeah, it's pretty
fantastic.
sad.
So you might ask the question though, like how are they driving up 3D7, 4D7, the Dow Mao ratio, whatever it is they're driving up? And the answer is they're running a lot of experiments. So a lot of experimentation is really the lifeblood, if you like.
Okay, and so experimentation, as I've understood it, is basically trying out different features of a product with different distinct user groups and then basically looking at how users respond in their behavior and basically finding out which size of a button or color of a button people are responding best to.
Yeah, absolutely. And, folks like Google and Meta who own Facebook and Instagram are running tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of experiments every year and trying to highly optimize things that, are as simple as you say as, colors, fonts, sizes of buttons, whether the buttons have rounded corners, all these kinds of things.
And I'm sure that if I picked up a version of Instagram that was like 2 or 3 years old, it would just feel really different. But it's all these tiny little changes that over time evolve the product.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a relentless machine, right? Like this is a machine that's just running the whole time.
And if they've got millions or billions of users, then they basically have a super rich data set across which to run all these experiments.
Absolutely. And, if you worked on Google search, you can probably get a signal within, seconds, if not minutes, what is the best treatment, we call it, that engages you.
Here's a question, because I've got a brother that lives in China and sometimes I use their e-commerce websites if I'm like sending him a gift. And it's very different UX. So does something like Instagram have different UX for its Chinese or Asian users versus its European users, or is it trying to optimize across both?
I can't speak to Instagram specifically, but what I can tell you is that particularly large alphabet languages, so we're thinking about things like Chinese, Japanese, and Korean in particular, experiences are very different for users who, speak and type these languages. And one of the reasons is it's quite hard to type.
Yeah.
So, when you've got hundreds or thousands of different characters, it's much, much harder to type. And so you'll find often that their experiences are much noisier, if you like.
That's how it feels, yeah.
So there's a lot more things to click on because it's a lot easier to click than it is to type.
Ah, that's interesting. Okay, yeah. So my husband is a native Arabic speaker, and when he types to his family, he uses the English alphabet. It replicates the sounds of the Arabic script, but he says it's much easier than typing in the Arabic script on WhatsApp.
And, think of, Arabic and Hebrew are different, but Chinese, Japanese, and Korea are in a whole different ballgame because the alphabet is so much larger, which isn't the case with Hebrew and Arabic. So when I've worked in these large companies, I remember particularly when I was at eBay, we used to just let the Korean team do Korea because certainly our Western intuition around what the experience should be, the way we experimented with it, how we thought about it, just did not sail properly.
That makes, I always had noticed that the Asian websites are, as you say, like they felt noisier to me. But when you break it down to the fact that it's easier to click than to type in the large alphabet languages, that's just like the most obvious thing I never would have thought of myself. So there's different versions, sensibly, as you broke it down, of an app depending on where you're from and what UX will be best suited to you. But how does that work? Like my brother lives in China and he would download Instagram in Mandarin because he speaks Mandarin. And then he comes on holiday to London. Does his app change?
No, not usually. So typically what an app is built for is what we call a country language pair. For example, if we've got listeners in the US, they probably get a US experience, but you choose whether you get a US English experience or a US Spanish experience. So probably when your brother downloads the app in China, he's probably got a Chinese Mandarin experience.
Yeah.
And when he comes to the US or he's over in the UK, probably stays that way. So unless he changes his country because he's permanently wanting to be there. So Amazon's probably a better example where, if you come to Australia and you open up your Amazon app, you're still going to be shopping in the UK unless you actually go and change your country to Australia.
Okay, so this has happened to me and it will surprise no one for me to tell you that I clicked on an Instagram ad yesterday because they promoted a dress that looked great. and I clicked on it and it said, oh, are you in Australia now? So it must have been twigged because I have the location settings on that I'd moved.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've done a little bit of a deep dive on UX there, but I know that UX is heavily guided by experimentation, and that's, we're going to maybe call it A/B testing, and just state possibly the very obvious. That's because you have one group A and you have one group B, and you're pushing out a different feature to group A and group B, and you're looking at your metric success in group A versus group B, and that's how you decide which is the better feature.
Exactly that. And there's a lot of art and a lot of science in doing that, probably a little bit more science than art. But these large companies have huge experimentation testbed environments where you can actually go and do this in a pretty scientific way and actually figure out what's the right experience for your users. And when you're letting many flowers bloom, whether it's A, B, or A, B, C, D, E, and F, you're going to pick the winner, and you're going to make the winner the default for everybody who's out there.
And doesn't this, I have a few questions. So I'll throw them all out and then you can answer them in the order that makes most sense. But like, would you notice if you're part of an A/B test? Because sometimes you sign up to be in a beta version of an app, but A/B testing, would you notice? And then like, are they selecting user groups based on desirable attributes? So we want to test this feature on users who are 2D7 because we want to get them 47, and Hannah doesn't need any testing because she's already 77.
A couple of great questions there. I'd say you can figure out that you're in a test group by sitting down and looking incredibly carefully at your experience versus, say, a friend's experience.
As long as they're on the same
place.
Same operating system, right? Because we talked last season about Android versus iOS and how those experiences might be different purposefully or because one's ahead of the other.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I'd say if you open up your iPhone and a friend's iPhone, you're both sitting at the kitchen bench and you sit there and you really study this carefully, you will be able to spot some differences. And so things to look out for are things like colors, fonts, sizes of fonts, those kinds of things, sizes of images, typefaces, those kinds of things. And you'll be able to spot some differences for sure.
Interesting. And they are choosing user groups based on what they're looking to drive?
I'd say that's probably the edge case. I'd say in general what they're doing is they're trying to get a representative part of the population.
Okay.
So they'll typically randomly assign some part of the population to be A and then randomly assign a different part of the population to be B. And they'll know that if there's a difference in engagement between those two, that's a statistically significant engagement, we call it, that they could, then ship to absolutely everybody.
And I know from working for a B2B2C tech company. So we sell a B2B product, but it's for the businesses we work with to interact with their consumers. So B2B2C. That can be tricky because you're asking your clients to lend you their customers for experimentation. And we don't always get the level of excitement or willingness as we'd want to improve our product because our clients are super protective of their customer base.
And I'd say probably also they don't realize the magic of experimentation, right? I think you have to see it up close inside a tech company to realize just how powerful this is. I mean, I'll tell you a quick story. The most important, significant A/B test I've ever been involved in was slightly increasing the size of the images in the search results page at eBay. Instead of just showing users, small thumbnails, we showed them medium-sized thumbnails. That experiment alone put more than $400 million of revenue.
That's crazy.
Right. And it's such a small adjustment. It wasn't even technically very hard.
Yeah.
Right. We're just showing slightly larger images. And I think when you've seen that up close, when you've realized just how powerful it is to be able to measure changes on the user base and understand a change in engagement, then you want to do more of it. And so I'd say a lot of companies are resistant to experimentation because it involves humans letting go of control and letting machines have control, and also being more about testing any idea not being right. Companies get quite resistant to that. But once you've seen it up close, you just want to do more of it.
Okay. And I imagine it's very rare that you actually lose 10% of your users overnight because you've changed the size of a font and people have just deleted the app, right? Because if you're a company that's worried about experimentation, I presume that's the worry, right? That you're going to lapse a bunch of users because you made the wrong decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you have to have a budget. So you have to have a think about if we're going to put our users in different treatments, how much are we willing to risk here to do that? And you also want to be monitoring these metrics all of the time, right? And making sure that if treatment D is not a great treatment, and we're statistically sure that is a poor treatment, then we just turn off D as soon as we possibly can, right?
Okay, and when you say budget, that's not budget for like devs to make changes to the platform. That's budget because if your conversion drops by 0.2% because of the way you formatted the button, then you want to have planned for that eventuality rather than just lose money.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I assume this is kind of like we talked about in previous episodes about how reported behavior is very different or can be very different to actual behavior. Like we think or maybe want to behave in a certain way and then our habits shine through with the reality. And I guess that's why emotionally led decisions around UX can be pretty flawed because you think you want a button that's this color in this corner of the page, but you've not actually tested that drives the results that you're after.
Yeah, and I've had lots of arguments with UX people where, they've said, hey, it doesn't fit our sort of, corporate ethos, the style guide, whatever else it is, and I don't want to do that. And I always say, like, let's just run the test. And then when we've got some data, we can have the conversation about who's right, who's wrong, whether the style guide needs changing, whether you're right. But we shouldn't be afraid of gathering data and learning. What we should be afraid of is thinking we're right.
Okay. And is there sometimes like a change fatigue? Like people famously don't like change and then Apple update their iOS operating system and like, I can't find the search button on the phone book, but am I really going to come around to loving it or can you sometimes get it wrong?
You can sometimes get it wrong. Where experimentation is powerful is when you're optimizing an existing experience, right? So we're talking about things like changing colors and font sizes, button sizes, colors, these kinds of things, sizes of boxes, how large an image is. Experimentation is wonderful for that. And that'll help us find the local maxima, best optimization of the existing experience. If you want to go do something completely different, experimentation is useless.
I feel like Apple do this a lot. Like they're always changing my operating system and then I can never find anything.
Yeah, and they're not a data company, right?
Okay.
So they are a hardware company, right? So if you look at the largest companies by market cap, you've got folks like, we'll skip over NVIDIA and we'll skip over Apple for a second. You've got Meta, Google, Microsoft, Amazon. Those folks are consumer companies that are all about data and software. Apple is not one of those. Apple is a hardware company that makes wonderful, wonderful hardware. I love their ecosystem, but they're absolutely not a data company.
Okay, and that's why I sometimes find their updates jarring, perhaps.
Yeah, and so the designers run Apple, not the experimentation people.
Okay, that makes sense. So assume in your time at eBay and Google Maps, etc., you've done your fair share of experimentation. So what would you say is like the biggest surprise or biggest failure or most counterintuitive experiment outcome that you came across?
Yeah, so obviously we talked about the experiment of increasing the size of images at eBay and that being certainly the most successful experiment that I've ever been involved in. I should say, to finish out that story, you can guess what idea the product manager had who was working on that, the next idea they had.
Make it even bigger.
That's it. And that delivered even more gains to the company.
No.
So it did.
Okay.
And so you can guess what they did after that.
No, because I'm going to say then you're going to have like one hit per search.
Yeah, and eventually the images got so large that as a leadership team we had to say, look, we need to stop increasing the size of the images. So then the PM went and worked on increasing the quality of the images, which also mattered.
Okay.
So this was a gift that just kept on giving. Turned out the larger the images, the more people shop, higher the quality of the images, the more people shop, and it was one of the most important things in the period of eBay when I worked there.
Okay. Any other cool experimentation stories?
I can tell you a ton. I'll tell you one where I kind of came last, as it were. So
okay.
Another eBay story. So we were thinking about, there's a button on eBay that says bid. So obviously, bid on an auction, right? And we were sitting there one day and we thought, I wonder if bid's the right word. Like, should we say bid now? Bid soon? Should it say bid and maybe it has a price that you could bid at? So you could say bid at $4.20. So like, this is an interesting theme. How do we get people bidding more on auctions and what would do that? So we came up with, I think it was 5 different ideas of what the bid button could look like. And I was sure I was going to win this. I know so much about eBay. I've been involved in this part of eBay for ages. My treatment's going to win for sure. I came stone cold last.
Oh, no.
Stone cold.
I thought you were going to tell me that you nailed it and you guessed the winner.
No. And look, the takeaway for me is what we should do is have many flowers blooming, lots of different ideas, make experimentation easy. As long as it's legal, it's not deliberately destroying the experience, whatever it is, we should get these ideas out as many as we can, as frequently as possible, and measure what happens. And then, let the data speak and then let the winner win.
I'm loving these stories. Have you got one more for us? Because they're really they're giving me pause for thought.
Yeah. My good friend Michael Cameron, who I've worked with at Microsoft, he went off and founded a company called Rome to Rio.
Oh, yeah, I do know that one.
Love Rome to Rio. Melbourne company.
Is it?
Yeah,
Love that.
It is indeed. And I was working with Michael a few years ago when he was still at Rome to Rio, and he told me a little bit about some experiments that they ran. And look, maybe we just dive in. I'm sure many of our listeners have used Rome to Rio. It's a fantastic product. Great for getting from A to B when A and B are a long way apart. It's basically a short summary. So if I want to go from Melbourne to Manchester, I want to figure out what flights I can take. Like, do I take a train from Heathrow? Whatever else it is. So fantastic product for that. The way they make money is they get a referral fee if you book some accommodation or you book a car after you've done that search through something like booking.com. So Michael and his team were highly, highly incented to get people to click a little part of the screen that said book accommodation or book car rental. And they played around with a bunch of different treatments of how do you say that? Like, how do I say book accommodation? Should I say book a hotel, book accommodation?
Book a room.
Book a room. What about best priced accommodation, best priced car rental? So we can sit here and brainstorm lots of different options. That's exactly what they did. And then they tried some different treatments, ran those as a big A/B test, and they actually increased, this is a small Melbourne startup, right? They increased their revenue by over $250,000 a year by just changing the text on the part of the screen that said book accommodation.
Because it just was more engaging unconsciously to users.
Yeah, absolutely. Turns out colours of buttons matter too. If you go and look at a lot of the travel sites, you'll find all the buttons are green. Not a coincidence.
Green signals go.
Green signals go. And so you get these sites that are predominantly blue or purple or whatever else it is, and all the buttons are green.
Huh. Do you know what? When I was a kid, I remember being told that McDonald's was red and yellow because it made you eat fast and got you like out of the restaurant so more people could come in. And I guess this is the virtual equivalent of that sort of like behavioral nudging.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, wow. Okay. So colors, sizes, placement.
How you say things.
How you say things. Yeah.
Absolutely. It all matters and it all drives engagement. There's an army of incredibly smart, well-qualified, typically young product managers in all of these companies who are working incredibly hard to drive up whatever metric it is that they want to drive up. And so, Hannah, it's not really your fault that you can't put your phone down. It's kind of you versus an experimentation engine that's powered by lots and lots of smart minds.
And is there also an element, Hugh, of like the personalization of stuff? So Google Maps is maybe not going to be as personalized to me, but like my Instagram feed or TikTok feed, if I had TikTok, I keep going back to it because the content, it makes me laugh. It's something that I'm interested in. And I assume that's good, like processing of all the data that I'm feeding in with my use and then applying that to the videos and images that are in the app and then pushing me the right ones to keep me scrolling, to keep me reopening the app, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And look, one of the biggest areas of experimentation in all of these large companies is search and recommendations. And the news feed or the feed in any social app is a form of that. And so you tend to get the brightest set of folks working on these search and recommendation style problems and feed style problems. And, their job is to make sure that you keep on scrolling.
And back in the early days of Instagram, I remember that the hashtag was really big and maybe Twitter as well, because it was like you hashtag your content and that's how the app or the algorithm knows what you're pushing, and then it will link you to relevant like recipients of your content. But that they're not really used anymore. So how are they doing that now? They just know that it's a picture of like, I don't know, avocado on toast.
Yeah, absolutely. So, today things are a lot more sophisticated than they used to be. And so things like processing the images as they're uploaded and trying to identify objects that are in them, and also other factors of them, are they a pleasing image? Is it well focused? Those kinds of things. Is there a single object in the image? All of these kinds of things are the sort of metadata that they can extract from it. And again, you can put this into the algorithms, into the AI system, and the AI system, will be able to serve the right images that are, probably great for all customers, but also great for you.
Does videos make that easier or harder? Because like, what was it? A few years back, Instagram moved from being very much a still image-based app with still image-based content to videos and reels and everything's moving all the time. Is that going to be easier or harder to identify that stuff?
It's definitely a little bit harder, but there's lots and lots of work that's gone into video over the years. So first of all, what happens with video is you divide it up into shots. And so if you're watching a video, you'll find, that cuts between scenes in different sorts of ways. So there's, hard cuts, there's fades, there's wipes, there's all kinds of things that happen. So you basically cut the video up into all of its different scenes, and then you can basically process the scenes individually to kind of understand what's in those scenes. So it's definitely more work than a still image, but you can think of a video as a series of still images, and particularly when you break it up into scenes or shots, it's a lot easier to process and try and understand.
Okay, so it's a combination of relevant content and intuitive user experience?
Yeah, exactly that. And lots of experimentation.
To mine my addictions.
That's it.
Okay, so I have revealed my cards as an avid Instagram and WhatsApp user. And I was trying to think about if I could only keep 3 apps in my phone. And I'm not including here my banking, because I obviously need my banking and my multi-factor authentication, because as we know from our privacy episode, that's just good sense. But I'm thinking about the more optional social apps that I'm using. And I've decided that my top 3 that I couldn't live without are Instagram, WhatsApp, and Google Maps. I really don't think I could get anywhere without Google Maps. But what would you say yours are?
That's a great question. I know if I had my screen in front of me, the answer's not too hard. I mean, first of all, I'm going to agree with you on Google Maps. I'm a little bit biased, I guess, since I worked on it, but I love that product.
Yeah,
it's such an amazing product. The team's done so much amazing work. Look, sadly, I've got Gmail pegged to the bottom of my screen. I think that's a fantastic email app. I'm still primarily an email kind of person. I have 5 different email accounts. So, that's something I just can't do without to sort of function. And then maybe my third one's a little bit more fun is I love my Whoop. And Whoop takes up, I don't know, a quarter of my home screen.
Okay, so Whoop is a wearable fitness tracker, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, you can think of it as a fancy heart rate monitor. So it's always tracking my heart rate and what's called heart rate variability, which is your ability for your heart to change pace.
Okay, so you're a big wearables fitness data guy, which we should probably do an episode on at some point because people are super into it. I love my Garmin. I didn't make my top 3, but I do love the fitness tracking.
Let's get somebody on from that part of the world because I think our listeners would love to know how these wearable devices work. And
definitely. I think it's safe to say that your Whoop app improves your life more than Instagram improves my life.
I don't know. Whoop's got me being very, very religious about when I go to bed and when I get up in the morning, which probably make me a whole lot less fun.
I can attest to this. Hugh is all over his fitness optimization.
Yeah. It's so important.
Okay, so there's a few more insights into us as co-hosts. That's been a super awesome episode. I don't know that it's going to help me stay off my phone. Well, do you know what's going to help me stay off my phone is the sunshine and your pool. That's what's going to help me stay off my phone. But
that helps.
Once I'm back into the cold depths of the English winter, I think I'll be straight back on my addictions.
I'll give you one life hack though, and it works for me, is put your phone away every Sunday. Just don't take it out of the cradle and pick it up again Monday. Start with 1D7, Hannah.
But what about my Google Maps? I guess I got to keep it local on a Sunday. I know where the farmer's market is and I know where the gym is.
Yeah, get somebody else to navigate for you.
Yeah, I'm also, do you know what though? Apple Pay. I should have put, I don't know if I would put that in my top 3 or if that's just a sort of table stakes, but I never hold a physical card anymore.
Maybe on Sundays.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, well, I will take my New Year's resolution with me and we will see you next time, guys. If you have enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, review, and rate the podcast.
Yeah, and you can find us at techoverflowpodcast.com where we've got all the episodes from season 2 and season 1. And we're also on LinkedIn, Instagram, and X.
Awesome. And I think we should go and take a look at the UX of techoverflowpodcast.com, Hugh, because maybe we can drive some addictive behaviors by getting some of those buttons in a really cool place.
Yeah, I think I'll just make the images bigger.
Yeah. All right, guys, we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.